In tonight's pre-election segment, we turn to the race for state representative in the 9th Suffolk District, including parts of the South End, the Fenway, Back Bay, and Roxbury. The district's currently represented by Byron Rushing. Our guest is one of the challengers in the Democratic primary on September 4th. We'd like to welcome Suezanne Patrice Bruce. Thank you very much for being with us, Suezanne.
Thank you, Chris.
Talk about your growing up in Boston. What was it like for you and your family?
Well, it was, what I consider a normal family. Never knowing anything different until I got older, dealing with poverty. But we had a single parent home. I had siblings, and myself being the oldest child, lived in housing developments until I was a young adult, where my mom moved up to Mattapan. But we lived in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan, and there was never a difference between the neighborhoods. They were all a part of Boston.
Well, years later, you learned a lot more about the differences, and you worked at the anti-poverty agency, ABCD. What did you do there?
Well, I started out approaching and dealing with the HIV and AIDS. When we first became aware of this new illness at that time, the first wave, I started out dealing with teaching individuals in the community how to protect themselves and what it was.
And what about helping people get out of poverty? Because you did some work with ABCD, I guess, helped them get funding for some of the projects.
Absolutely, absolutely. ABCD, I will be forever grateful to for being an anti-poverty agency, which is where I learned most of my skills in advocacy for housing and Head Start programs and English as a second language and other programs that dealt with issues that many diverse socioeconomic communities face in this city, state, and country.
Well, if you were to become the next state rep, how would you use that advocacy know-how, let's say, to get money for housing?
Well, I would continue to work with the people. Most people talk about gentrification as leaders. I talk with the folks and we talk about displacement and how we manage to avoid it and maintain our sustainable communities. As underdogs, a lot of times we don't have all the information or the information isn't accessible. So I would make sure that the government in my leadership role is transparent so that others will understand how they can be involved.
One thing in this district that gets the attention of a lot of people who even live outside of it is the intersection of Mass Avenue and Cass Boulevard. When you look at that, what's going on there with the people who are struggling with drug use, what do you want to do about that?
That's actually my first priority in office, is to address the crisis around opiates. Having this approach that was similar to HIV and AIDS with Ryan White funding, we now have the opportunity to have funding in this city and in this state to address this issue. This issue can be addressed by treatment on demand, by long-term support services, as well as abstinence programs. We have to be mindful about drugs that are similar to what we did with the Vietnam War, which was use methadone to address heroin. We have to be careful on how we address these dependency issues. And then I would like to start off by preventing them. What are the ills in society that encourage someone to need or want something to have as a dependency on to avoid living in, society? Why is society so challenged that people are looking for ways out to just anesthetize themselves?
Well, it's not new that we have treatment, that we've had drug treatment for a long time. What would you like to do to change that? What's the missing piece there?
We need to have programs that have history and measurable goals of successes. And there have been. And if we go back into self-help groups and programs of that nature and having places where individuals can go to get help. Again, Chris, it's important to look at what the ills are that even create the issue versus intervention.
Well, another problem with the opioid crisis is that the mortality rate for Black people is higher. What do you think's behind that?
For opiates, I think we have some differences in a little bit of statistical data. There are quite a few overdoses, and this is an area where people of color or black people had been incarcerated for mental illness or opiate use, where today we're not doing that. You hear people talk about, leaderships talk about safe injection sites, which is a big difference for how it was approached then. I know a large community, and actually come from the community of recovering persons, where people who have 30 and 40 years abstinent. Myself, I've been in recovery for 30 years. I started at 24 years old.
And I'm thinking here, maybe there's a connection with the incarceration rate, because when people get incarcerated, sometimes the treatment is turned off, right?
Yes, we do need, that's a whole nother topic around our criminal justice system.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Suezanne Patrice Bruce, candidate for state representative in the 9th Suffolk District. Suezanne, the incumbent Byron Rushing, he's been there for a while, but he's certainly, by most measures, pretty progressive. So why run against him?
Well, I'm not running against anyone. I'm running for a seat where I have the opportunity to bring my ideas that are new and fresh to the table. Representative Rushing, who I have much respect for and admiration for the work he has done, as we get comfortable or older or age, if I may, you know, as we all are, I mean, it's not a secret, we as humans can lose sight of some of the basic things. It's just a human nature that we all face. But I would like to continue to build on what he has already done. We have some of the same ideas, but we have a different style and an approach.
Another problem in this district you've brought up is traffic congestion, and there's probably going to be more growth around this district. So what would you like to see done about that?
Well, we definitely need to have some clean fuel. Our transit system has a lot to be desired when you talk about where we are in the country around utilizing a transit that is more sensitive to the environment. Pollution from our transit system is it's not good at all, and I don't think we talk enough about how we make changes. I think Massachusetts can become a leader.
Well, among the possible changes for this district is the redevelopment of the city's public works yard near the expressway at the Mass Ave exit. And one of the ideas that's been talked about lately is maybe a soccer stadium for the New England Revolution. What do you think about that?
Well, we need to talk more about having any stadiums. We have some basic things that need to be dealt with in our backyard right now, what we already have.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Suezanne Patrice Bruce, Democratic candidate for state representative in the 9th Suffolk District. And one more time, the election is going to take place next Tuesday, September 4th.